The first time Nathan Cole saw her, she was wiping down a marble counter that wasn't hers to touch. The cafe sat at the edge of his company's headquarters. Glass walls, espresso machines gleaming like surgical tools, and there she was, in a worn apron and with eyes that didn't match her world. She moved quietly, as if trying not to disturb the music of the place. Nathan didn't believe in accidents, but that moment, it felt like one written by someone else. Before you go further, subscribe to be part of stories that still believe in love. Nathan was 37, the kind of man whose silence filled a room. The newspapers called him the architect of empires. His employees whispered that he was incapable of warmth. Money had never been his problem. Emotion always had. He'd built his fortune on precision and distance. After losing his wife in a car accident 5 years earlier, he'd buried the man who used to laugh and left the billionaire standing in his place. Across the city, Sofia Alvarez counted tips after midnight to pay for night classes in linguistics. Her hands carried the scent of coffee and soap. Her mind, however, lived elsewhere. Inside books she borrowed and couldn't afford. She believed in small acts of kindness, in the poetry hidden inside ordinary days. What she didn't believe was that her path could ever cross with Nathan's, until it did through someone else entirely. Nathan's daughter, Lily, was 16 and brilliant, but broken in her own quiet way. Expelled from 2 private schools, she'd stopped speaking to tutors who treated her like a project. Her rebellion wasn't loud. It was calculated, like her father's business meetings. When Nathan's assistant showed him a list of available tutors, he dismissed them all until Lily's soft voice interrupted. "Can I choose?" He looked up from his laptop. "You? You don't even attend the sessions." "Then maybe that's the problem," she replied. "Let me find someone I actually want to listen to." 2 days later, Lily walked into that same cafe where Sofia worked. She noticed how the waitress smiled at a homeless man who came in every morning just for warmth. There was no charity in the gesture, only respect. That was what caught Lily's attention. She watched Sofia explain a menu to a foreign couple in perfect Spanish, then switched to gentle English so the man could understand. That mix of patience and precision, that was what Lily had never found in any tutor. When Lily approached her with the strange request, Sofia thought it was a prank. "You want me to what?" she asked, half laughing. "Teach me," Lily said simply. "Languages, life, something." Sofia hesitated. "I'm a waitress, not a teacher." "You're both," Lily answered, placing a business card on the counter. "My father's driver will pick you up tomorrow, if you say yes." That night, Sofia sat in her tiny apartment, holding the card like it was an artifact. Cole Enterprises. The name echoed through the city in headlines and skyscrapers. She Googled Nathan, found the expected net worth magazine covers, philanthropy events, and a few photos that didn't match the others. A man with tired eyes holding a little girl in a hospital parking lot. She wondered which version she would meet. When she arrived the next morning, the mansion looked less like a home and more like a statement. Glass, steel, and silence. The staff spoke in murmurs. The air smelled of expensive emptiness. Nathan was in his study, surrounded by shelves that displayed more awards than memories. He didn't look up when she entered, just said, "Miss Alvarez?" "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "My daughter insists on this arrangement." "I don't," Sofia blinked. "Then why agree?" He finally looked at her, eyes like cold blue glass. "Because she smiled for the first time in months when she mentioned you." The sessions began awkwardly. Lily tested Sofia's patience. Nathan tested her composure. Every evening she'd arrive after her shift, still smelling faintly of coffee. She'd sit on the living room floor with Lily, surrounded by notebooks and laughter that hadn't lived there for years. And somewhere behind the half-closed door, Nathan listened without admitting it. He told himself it was curiosity, nothing more. But as the weeks passed, Sofia's voice became a kind of therapy. She didn't flatter or fear him. When they crossed paths in the hallway, she'd greet him like any ordinary man, not a billionaire. He found that disarming. One evening he returned early and found her in the garden, teaching Lily to describe flowers in French. Rose, tulipe, lys, lily, Sofia said softly. "Do you know what your name means in French?" The girl shook her head. "Lys," Sofia smiled. "It means purity. Something beautiful that grows even in silence." Nathan stood by the window unseen and felt something move in him that had been dead for too long. Later that night, over dinner, he tried to ask about the lesson. "She makes learning feel like music," Lily said. Nathan nodded but didn't reply. He didn't know how to explain the strange warmth rising in him. A week later, he saw Sophia again, this time at the cafe. She was off duty, sitting alone, reading a battered novel. He approached without thinking. "I didn't know you came here on your days off," he said. She looked up, surprised. "You didn't seem like someone who'd come here at all." He smiled faintly. "I wasn't, until now." They talked for 20 minutes about books, language, grief. Sophia spoke with honesty that felt like sunlight through cracked glass. Nathan realized how rare that was in his world of rehearsed conversations. But when his driver appeared at the door, reality snapped back. The billionaire and the waitress belonged to different universes, and both knew it. Still, something had begun, something neither could name. That night, Sophia received an envelope on her doorstep with no return address. Inside was a check, 5 times her monthly salary, and a short note in Nathan's handwriting for your time and your patience. "I know what they're worth." She stared at it for minutes, torn between gratitude and insult. For the first time since she'd met him, Sophia felt anger rise, not at his wealth, but at his assumption that kindness had a price. The next evening, when she arrived for Lily's lesson, Nathan was waiting in the doorway. "You received it," he said. "I did," she replied, her tone calm but firm. "And?" "I returned it," she said, handing him the sealed envelope. "Because you can't buy the only thing your money doesn't understand." His jaw tightened. "And what's that?" Sophia met his eyes without fear. "Respect." He didn't respond, but something flickered in his expression, something between shame and admiration. For the first time in years, Nathan Cole had no idea what to say. And that silence would change everything. By morning, the envelope lay on Nathan's desk like a reproach. He turned it over once, twice, then slid it open and read the same truth he'd heard on Sophia's lips the night before. Respect. It wasn't that he'd tried to buy her kindness. He told himself it was compensation. Gratitude, a professional gesture, but he knew the look in her eyes when she had handed it back. She had measured him, weighed his habits, and for the first time in years found him wanting. He appeared at the threshold of the library before Lily's session, a man rehearsing humility the way he'd rehearsed earnings calls. Sophia looked up from a spread of notebooks and flashcards she'd handwritten on train rides between shifts. Lily sat cross-legged on the rug, pen tucked behind one ear. "I owe you an apology," Nathan said, his voice unhardened by the marble hallway behind him. "I meant the check as thanks, not purchase." Sophia nodded once. "Then accept my thanks for saying it." She returned to Lily. "All right, mademoiselle, today we'll work on how language changes with who's in the room. Power doesn't just wear suits. Sometimes it's in the verbs people choose." Lily's grin was quick, almost feral with delight. "Can we do the thing where we rewrite the sentence 3 ways? Formal, normal, honest?" Sophia laughed. "My favorite game." From the doorway, Nathan watched his daughter lean toward the world again. The house had been a museum of grief, curated, hushed. Now postcards of French idioms dotted the walls, sticky notes labeled flowers in 3 languages. And there was a rhythm to the days that had nothing to do with markets or mergers. There was a new vocabulary creeping in, possibility. Between exercises, Lily disappeared to fetch a book. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that asks to be filled. "I also need to adjust something else," Nathan said to Sophia. "Your rate. Tell me what's fair." "Fair isn't the same as generous," she answered. "I'll text your assistant the number from my other clients. And I want something in writing. Hours, boundaries, expectations. And respect," he added, trying on the word like a suit cut in a style he'd forgotten. "Non-negotiable." "Non-negotiable," she agreed. Boundaries sketched, the work deepened. Sophia didn't teach Lily subjects so much as she taught her to listen, to sounds, to silences, to the invisible weight of words. She used films with subtitles, letters from poets, the overheard cadence of the cafe's morning rush. Lily began writing replies to the world in 3 languages and one common feeling. In the evenings, the house shifted around their lessons. The cooks learned to plate dinner later. The chauffeur learned to turn down the radio when he dropped Sophia at the subway. Nathan learned to sit at the far end of the long dining table and wait. Wait until laughter from the library spilled. Wait until Lily joined him with cheeks flushed from effort. Once, midway through a lesson, Lily's attention drifted and a storm gathered behind her eyes, the kind that usually ended with slammed doors. Instead, Sophia asked, "Ever tried translating a memory?" Lily frowned. "How do you translate something you've never said out loud?" "Slowly," Sophia said. "You start with a feeling, then find it a home in words." They chose a memory of the day Lily's mother used to bake lemon tarts and hum an off-key lullaby. The three of them ended up in the kitchen, midnight hour and flower dust light. Sophia tied on a spare apron, moving through bowls and zest with a competence you can't learn from recipes. Nathan stood back, arms folded, pretending not to breathe in the way the room suddenly felt like a family again. When the tart came out, imperfect and perfect, Sophia murmured in French, "Ça sent comme un souvenir heureux." "It smells like a happy memory." Lily whispered the phrase twice, as if polishing a stone. Nathan said nothing because he didn't trust his voice. Pressure, when it came from predictable rooms. Elena Park, his chief of staff, cornered him outside the boardroom with a clipboard of realities. "The optics, Nathan. A waitress as Lily's tutor?" She kept her voice low. "The board is tolerant until it isn't. You're weeks from closing the Helena acquisition. You don't want tabloid distraction." "She's not a distraction," he said more sharply than he intended. Elena's eyes flicked to the closed door, then back. "I don't doubt the woman is competent, but this is a world that reads photographs before it reads facts." "Then we'll give it no photographs," he replied, already irritated by how naive it sounded. "And we'll give Lily what she needs." "Understood," Elena said in the tone of someone who understood too much. "I'll draft a standard contractor agreement. Keep it tidy." Sophia signed no NDA she hadn't read twice. She requested a clause about keeping the power to walk away, no golden handcuffs tied with highbrow words. Nathan signed it with the quickness of a man accustomed to closing deals, and yet the signature felt different. He was not buying a lesson plan. He was making a promise to two people, and to a version of himself he suspected might yet exist. Days braided into a ritual. A stolen coffee on the back steps before the lesson. A question slipped like a note under a door. Do you ever learn a new language without meaning to? Does grief translate the same in every tongue? Is kindness an accent? When Sophia missed a beat one evening, Nathan noticed the way she flexed her wrist. "You burned yourself," he said. "Kettle at the cafe," she replied, hiding the redness with a sleeve. "My fault." He reached instinctively, then stopped at the boundary line they'd drawn. She didn't step back. He fetched the first aid kit, wordless, the way a man might learn a prayer he never thought he'd need. His fingers were careful, unfamiliar with the grammar of tending a wound. She watched him, not with gratitude exactly, but with the stunned quiet of someone seeing a myth blink. "Thank you," she said, once the gauze lay neat as a white flag, "for treating it like a bruise and not a problem you could buy away." He almost said, "I'm learning." Instead, "You shouldn't have to hurry through pain to stay on schedule." She laughed softly. "Welcome to shift work, Mr. Cole." "Nathan," he corrected. She nodded but did not say his name. The world, indifferent to their careful pace, spun forward. Lily's former school emailed about a possible reinstatement if she passed an academic review, languages included. Lily's face carried light and terror in equal measure. "If I fail, it means I am the problem again," she said. Sophia shook her head. "If you fail, it means we adjust. That's what languages do. They adapt to the mouth that speaks them." They built a study plan like a bridge. Sophia interlaced grammar with music. Conjugations set to piano scales in the echoing music room, vocabulary hidden in recipes, idioms tucked into film scenes. She didn't coddle. When Lily missed a tense, Sophia made her speak the mistake aloud, then walk it back into sense. Emotional transformation, Lily's and Nathan's, arrived not with speeches, but in the sound of a teenager choosing to try again. On a Saturday, Sophia persuaded Lily to leave the compound for the first time in weeks. "Bookstore," she declared, a queen naming her realm. Lily agreed on one condition: her father had to come. Nathan resisted out of instinct and accepted out of love. In the cramped aisles, he discovered what the world looked like when it wasn't curated to impress him. Sophia handed him a battered copy of Rilke and said, "You don't have to understand it. Let it understand you." He was about to scoff when Lily tapped his arm, eyes wide at the children's section where a book she'd loved when her mother was alive waited like a relic. They bought too many books, which is to say, just enough. By the register, as Sophia reached for her wallet out of sheer habit, Nathan touched her wrist, the same wrist he'd bandaged, and said quietly, "Let me this time." The cashier rang it up. Outside, the autumn light held them all in a fragile truce. 2 blocks away, a freelance photographer, bored and hungry, lifted his camera. The next morning, Elena slid a tablet onto Nathan's breakfast tray without preface. A gossip site had published a photo. Billionaire in rolled-up sleeves, hand brushing the wrist of a waitress in a bookshop doorway. Lily stood between them, half cropped out like an afterthought. The headline was predictable. Billionaire love story? Rich man, poor woman spotted buying true love stories in downtown bookshop. The article read like a dare. Forbidden love, class difference romance, a romantic drama he hadn't authored. Beneath it, comments multiplied like a fever, some soft with hope, some sharp with contempt. The words heartbreak and redemption got tossed around as if a life could be summarized by a tagline. Nathan's phone lit with board members' numbers, then with Victor Shaw, the one investor who pretended concern while counting opportunities. "Handle it," Victor texted, "or the market will handle you." Lily read the headline before breakfast and went very quiet. She carried her tray to the library and shut the door. Sophia arrived in the afternoon to find the staff colder, the halls louder with silence. She saw the article on someone's phone, saw herself turned into a story about money and motive. She felt, for a single stunned heartbeat, the old shame that people try to give those who work with their hands. Nathan met her in the foyer. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it. "I know," she replied, steady. "But you don't get to decide what I do with this." "What do you want to do?" he asked. "Teach your daughter," she said, chin high. And refused to be erased. Elena appeared at his shoulder. "PR recommends releasing a statement that she's a temporary contractor, and that any personal interpretations are false." Sophia lifted her eyes. "From the marble floor to the man who used to solve problems with money. Release whatever you need. I'll be in the library with Lily." She walked past him, past the tablet and the headlines and the judgments. She opened the library door and froze. Lily was at the window seat, knees pulled up, a suitcase half-packed on the rug. "I won't be the headline that ruins his deals," the girl said, voice small. "I can leave. It's my fault anyway." Sophia knelt, heart steadying itself the way a hand steadies a trembling cup. "Lily," she said, choosing each word like a stone for a bridge. "If you run from people who don't know your name, you'll forget it too." The hallway creaked. Nathan stood at the threshold, watching the 2 people who had begun to teach him to speak without winning. His phone vibrated again, Victor impatient, a board member alarmed. A journalist fishing. He stared at the suitcase on the floor, at the girl who was his whole life, at the woman who looked at his daughter like she was more than a shareholder value. He took one step inside, then another, until his shadow touched both of them. "Then tell me what staying costs," he said, and from somewhere down the corridor, a door clicked open and footsteps approached, the measured, expensive stride of trouble arriving with a smile. The woman who stepped into the library wore confidence like perfume, subtle but impossible to ignore. Veronica Lang, Nathan's ex-fiancée and the public face of his charitable foundation. She had been abroad for months, collecting accolades and investments. Now she arrived with the easy familiarity of someone who still believed she belonged in his story. "I saw the headlines," she said, dropping her handbag on the table as if she'd never left. "So this is the famous Tutor." Sophia rose, extending a polite hand. "Good afternoon." Veronica's gaze skimmed over the apron folded on the chair, the notebooks filled in careful cursive, the faint scent of coffee that clung to Sophia's skin. "Afternoon," she replied, a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "You're quite the topic online. Congratulations." Lily tensed. Nathan's voice cut through the air, low and edged. "Enough, Veronica." "Oh, Nathan, please." She waved a manicured hand. "I'm only concerned. The board's restless, investors nervous. I thought you'd appreciate a friendly warning before your human interest experiment turns into a liability." Sophia gathered the papers without flinching. "If my presence endangers your reputation, Mr. Cole, I can resign." "You'll do no such thing," he said more sharply than he meant. "Lily's progress speaks for itself. Veronica's brow lifted. Progress or infatuation? Hard to tell in these forbidden love narratives people adore. Lily stood abruptly. She's my teacher, not your headline. The silence that followed was thick enough to breathe. Veronica's smile faltered. She'd underestimated the girl she once called the heiress in training. She excused herself with a calculated kiss on Nathan's cheek and left the house humming with the aftertaste of poison. When the door closed, Sophia exhaled. She's right about one thing, she said quietly. The story is already written for us and I don't control the pen. Nathan met her eyes. Then we'll rewrite it. He believed it when he said it, but rewriting a story requires more than intention. It demands loss. That evening, Sophia returned to the cafe for her night shift. The manager, Leo, a friend since school, looked up from the register. You okay? The internet's got theories about you and some billionaire. Apparently I'm the nation's new scandal, she said, forcing a laugh. Leo shrugged. Let them talk. They've never met you. But words had weight and soon customers stared too long, whispers threading through the air. The next morning, the cafe owner called her in. You're good staff, Sophia, the best. But this attention, it's bad for business. Take a few weeks off. Paid leave. Let it cool. Paid leave. A gentle dismissal wearing politeness. She nodded, hiding the sting behind a practiced smile. At the mansion, Lily greeted her with a conspiratorial grin and a tray of pastries she'd baked herself. We're celebrating, the girl said. I passed my trial exam. Sophia clapped her hands, genuine joy blooming through the ache of the day. You earned it. Nathan appeared with coffee, relaxed in a way Sophia hadn't seen before. Your methods work miracles, he said. Not miracles, she replied. Just patience. He looked at her then, not as employer, not as distraction, but as equal. The moment held, fragile and dangerous. Lily's phone chimed. Dad, it's Veronica. She says the foundation gala is tomorrow. She wants to meet me there. Nathan frowned. That you don't have to go. She says Mom's scholarship fund will be dedicated, Lily said softly. I want to, Sophia understood. She should, she told Nathan. It's her mother's memory. He hesitated, then nodded. We'll all go. The gala shimmered beneath chandeliers that cost more than Sophia's yearly rent. She wore a simple black dress Lily had chosen, nothing designer, just clean lines and quiet dignity. Cameras flashed as they entered, the billionaire, his daughter, and the woman the tabloids called the mystery tutor. Inside, champagne glimmered and conversations blurred into a hum of wealth. Veronica, radiant in crimson silk, glided toward them. You made it, she said sweetly. And you brought your cause, Sophia smiled. I'm here for Lily. Of course, Veronica said, then turned to Nathan. The donors expect you on stage. He excused himself, and for a brief moment the two women stood alone in the crowd. Don't mistake his courtesy for affection, Veronica murmured. Men like Nathan love puzzles. You're just a new one. Sophia's voice stayed calm. If kindness confuses him, I'll take that risk. Veronica's eyes narrowed. You're out of your depth, maybe, Sophia said. But I'm not drowning. Before Veronica could answer, applause broke out. Nathan had taken the stage, speaking about legacy and education, about the scholarship named for Lily's mother. His words were measured, but when his gaze found Sophia across the room, something unguarded slipped through, a pause. A softness, reporters noticed. After the speech, as the crowd dispersed, Lily hugged her father. Mom would have been proud, she said. Veronica watched from a distance, expression unreadable. Sophia excused herself to the balcony for air. The night smelled of rain and roses. Nathan joined her, jacket draped over his arm. You shouldn't be alone out here, he said. Neither should you, she replied. But we both are. He leaned against the railing beside her. I used to think money could insulate me from chaos. Turns out it just builds higher walls. Then stop climbing them, she said softly. Step down. He looked at her, something breaking open behind his composed facade. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's human, he took a breath. When I saw you at the cafe that first day, I thought you were... He stopped himself. A waitress. She finished, smiling faintly. A mirror, he corrected, showing me what I'd become. The wind lifted a strand of her hair. He resisted the impulse to touch it. She turned to leave, but he caught her hand. Not possessive, just hesitant. Stay for dessert, he said. Lily will ask where you went. I can't, she whispered. People are watching. Let them, he murmured. Her eyes met his. That's easy for you to say. They don't see you when they look at me. They see a story they already believe. He released her hand, guilt carving lines across his composure. Then tell me how to fix it. You can't, she said. You can only choose which truth to live. She left him standing there, surrounded by everything money could buy and none of what he truly wanted. At midnight, back in her apartment, Sophia found a letter slid under her door. No signature, just a logo, Cole Enterprises. Inside, a single sheet, effective immediately. Your contract as educational consultant is suspended pending internal review. She read it twice, disbelief turning to quiet fury. Then she folded the letter neatly, placed it on the table and sat in the dark until dawn. At the mansion, Nathan woke to silence. Lily's room was empty except for a note on the bed. Don't worry. Dad, I'll fix it. By the time his car reached the cafe district, Sophia's apartment door was open, lights off, the table bare except for the letter he hadn't authorized, and the envelope she'd once returned still sealed, with a single line scrawled across it in her handwriting. Respect can't be suspended. From somewhere behind him, a voice cleared softly. Elena, phone in hand, expression grim. Nathan, she's gone. Gone where? He demanded. Elena hesitated. To the board. She's going to tell them the truth. He turned sharply. What truth? That the story you're living isn't about business anymore. The boardroom on the 42nd floor smelled of glass, tension, and fear disguised as civility. Nathan stood at the head of the table, every eye on him. Across from him sat Victor Shaw, silver-haired, all calculation. Beside him, Elena Park, tablet glowing with reports. And at the far end, out of place yet unshaken, Sophia. No suit, no title, just presence. She requested to speak. Eleanor began, her tone brittle. Under Clause 4C of her contract, Victor adjusted his cufflinks. A waitress teaching languages to your daughter is already a PR oddity. Marching her into a board meeting is suicidal. Nathan ignored him. Go ahead, Miss Alvarez, Sophia rose. Her voice was calm but carried the quiet authority of truth. I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to defend a child. The world outside thinks this is a scandal, but the only thing that happened inside your walls is that your daughter learned to speak again. Murmurs rippled through the table. Victor leaned forward, eyes narrowing. This company runs on reputation, Miss Alvarez. One photograph, one rumor, one human story, she interrupted. You trade in billions, but your brand will survive only if people believe you remember what humanity looks like. For a second, the room forgot who was rich and who wasn't. Then Victor laughed, cold and precise. Nathan, you've let sentiment cloud judgment. Suspend the woman. Settle it quietly. Otherwise Helena Group walks, and with it, 6,000 jobs. Sophia turned to Nathan. He's right about one thing. You have to choose. The board waited. Nathan's pulse hammered in his ears. For years, decisions had been simple. Cost versus gain, risk versus reward. Now the equation was moral. Every face in the room represented an empire he'd built on control, and now a single waitress threatened to unravel it. He looked at Sophia, saw the fire beneath her calm, and felt the hollow in his chest where peace used to live. I'll issue a statement, he said finally, but not the one you expect. He walked to the head of the table, pressed a button, and a slideshow blinked onto the screen. Photographs of the scholarship program, the schools they funded, Lily's early therapy sessions. You all want a story? Here's the real one. My daughter was lost. This woman helped bring her back. If the cost of that is gossip, I'll pay it gladly. Elena's breath caught. Victor's jaw clenched. The rest of the board sat in stunned silence. Nathan turned to Sophia. You're reinstated. Effective immediately. Sophia's voice softened. You don't owe me that. I owe you honesty, he said. For once in my life, the meeting dissolved in chaos. Cameras flashed outside as they left the building. Questions shouted, microphones thrust forward, the scent of headlines thick in the air. Nathan shielded her with his coat, but Sophia walked steady, unafraid. That night, the city rained the way it does when it wants to wash everything clean. Nathan drove without speaking, the wipers beating in time with his thoughts. He stopped at the cafe where it had all begun. It was closed, lights dimmed, but he parked anyway. Sophia looked out the window, rain tracing paths across the glass. You just declared war on your own investors. she said softly. Maybe I was tired of surrendering to people who confuse power with decency. She smiled faintly. You're different from the man I met here. Because of you, he said. Her gaze met his. No, because of what you let yourself feel. He reached for her hand across the console. No rush, no claim, just the slow ache of two lives that shouldn't have touched but did. What happens now? He asked. I keep teaching, she said. Lily still has a test to pass, and after that, she hesitated. After that, you decide if the world you built can hold a woman like me. The next morning, the storm made headlines again. Not the weather, but Nathan's statement. Billionaire defends Tutor defies board. Some called it madness. Others called it love. For the first time in years, Nathan didn't care what they called it. Lily returned home that afternoon with a lightness that hadn't existed before. You really did it, she told him. How you stood up for us, he smiled. For you. She looked past him toward the hallway where Sophia's laughter drifted as she unpacked her lesson notes. For both of us, Lily corrected. Nathan watched Sophia through the doorway, sleeves rolled, hair loose, eyes alive. The mansion, once sterile and echoing, felt lived in again. He realized he didn't want her presence to be temporary anymore. Later that evening, the three of them sat on the kitchen floor, eating leftovers straight from the containers, laughter spilling into the quiet spaces where grief once lived. It felt domestic, absurdly simple, dangerously right. Sophia looked at Nathan, her expression softer than he'd ever seen. You know they'll come after you again. I know, he said. Let them. I've survived worse things than truth. Truth isn't what hurts, she murmured. It's what frees you. He reached for her hand again, but before his fingers touched hers, the front gates buzzed. Elena's voice echoed through the intercom. Nathan, you need to see this. It's urgent. He stood, reluctant. Wait for me. She nodded, but her eyes said what neither dared. We've already waited too long. Outside, Elena handed him a folder, rain dripping from her umbrella. Victor's moving fast, she said. He called an emergency vote. If he wins, you lose control of Cole Enterprises by morning. Nathan's jaw tightened. He's weaponizing the scandal. He's weaponizing your heart, Elena replied quietly. And he might win. Nathan looked back toward the window, where Sophia's silhouette lingered against the warm light inside. He'd spent his life protecting assets. Now for the first time he wanted to protect something he couldn't own. He turned back to Elena. Then I'll fight him. How? She asked. By showing them that love isn't my weakness, he said. It's my redemption. He stepped back into the house, rain soaking his suit, eyes fixed on Sophia. The storm outside was only beginning, but so was the one that would test whether their hearts could survive the cost of truth. The following morning began with the stillness that comes right before a battle. Nathan hadn't slept. The board's emergency vote was set for 10 a.m., and by 9 the mansion felt like an armory of nerves. Eleanor paced the study, phone pressed to her ear, trading quiet arguments with investors who had already chosen sides. Lily sat on the stairs, watching her father fasten his cufflinks with the precision of a soldier dressing for war. Sophia stood by the door, hands clasped. The same serenity that had steadied a broken teenager, now trying to anchor a man who had built empires on fear of loss. You don't have to go, she said. I do, Nathan replied. If I don't fight for this, they'll decide what love costs. Sophia shook her head. Who can't win their way? Then I'll change the rules. He turned to Lily, touched her cheek, and smiled faintly. Take care of her lessons. I'll be back before lunch. You always say that, Lily whispered. Just come back. He nodded, but his eyes betrayed the uncertainty of a man who had everything to lose and had finally found something worth losing it for. At headquarters, the conference room was filled to the edge with people who once bowed when Nathan entered. Today they looked at him with the watchful hunger of wolves circling a wounded alpha. Victor Shaw presided at the center, immaculate, polite, and deadly. Before we begin, Victor said smoothly, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this special session. The agenda is simple: leadership stability. The recent publicity has damaged investor confidence. A vote of removal has been proposed. Nathan leaned forward, voice steady. If you're here to discuss leadership, let's begin by defining it. Leadership isn't about protecting image. It's about protecting integrity. You all built your fortunes under this name. I won't apologize for reminding you that our work is meant to serve people, not the market's appetite for scandal. Victor smirked. Beautiful speech, but shareholders don't eat principles. They eat profits. And right now, Nathan, you're starving them. A murmur of approval rippled through the table. Elena spoke next, carefully measured. We've received statements of support from our scholarship partners, schools and charities. Public sentiment is turning in our favor. Pulling Nathan now would look like cowardice. Victor's expression tightened. Or like damage control. He pressed a button on the table. Screens flickered to life with photographs. Nathan and Sophia at the bookstore, the balcony, the board meeting. Captions bloomed across the images. Forbidden love, rich man, poor woman, the Tutor scandal that shook Wall Street. Optics, Victor said, folding his hands. They define trust. And trust defines capital. You've blurred those lines beyond repair. Nathan looked at the images, then back at the faces that once respected him. Maybe you're right, he said softly. Maybe I did blur them, because for the first time in my life, I saw what truth looks like when it's not filtered through profit. And I'd rather lose this company than lose what made me human again. The room fell into stunned silence. Victor leaned back, smiling like a man who'd just won. That's your statement on record, then? It is, Nathan said. Excellent. Let's vote. One by one, the board members raised their hands. Hesitant, ashamed, decisive. The count was close. When Elena's turn came, she looked at Nathan for a long moment, then said, Abstain. It wasn't loyalty. It was heartbreak. Victor tallied the votes. Motion passes by one. Nathan exhaled slowly, feeling a decade of power dissolve into air. Then I'm done. He rose, straightened his jacket, and looked around the room. Take the empire. Just don't destroy what it was built for. As he walked out, reporters were already waiting, hungry for sound bites. He gave them none. Back at the mansion, Lily ran to the door the moment she heard his car. What happened? He smiled faintly, exhaustion softening the edges of his face. I'm unemployed, Sophia froze. They removed you? Yes, Victor's the new CEO. What will you do? Start over, he said simply. From something real this time. That night they sat together on the terrace, city lights scattered like fallen stars below. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of choices. You shouldn't have done that for me, Sophia said finally. I didn't, Nathan replied. I did it for the man I used to be before I forgot what love costs. Her voice was soft but unyielding. And what does it cost now? He turned toward her. Everything I was willing to pay for nothing before. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes glinting with the kind of truth that doesn't need translation. Then maybe it wasn't love that cost you everything. Maybe it's what saved you. The sound of her words lingered in the air, fragile as breath. Nathan leaned back, eyes closing. Rain beginning again in the distance, a storm returning like a promise. But the peace didn't last. The next morning, Elena arrived with news that shattered what calm remained. Victor's first act as CEO, she said quietly, is to terminate the scholarship program. Every school, every student gone. He's selling the division to fund the shareholders' payout. Nathan's face went pale. He's dismantling Lily's mother's foundation. Sophia gripped his arm. He's doing it to punish you. Then he's going to learn the one thing money can't buy back, Nathan said, voice low. Conscience. Lily stepped into the doorway, eyes red from tears she hadn't shed yet. Dad, what are you going to do? Nathan looked at both of them. His daughter, his teacher, the two people who had become his compass. He straightened, resolve hardening like steel. I'm going to fight for it, he said. Not as a billionaire, Sophia frowned gently. Then how? As a man who finally knows what he believes in. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, Lily reached for Sophia's hand, and Nathan's gaze held them both as if they were the only proof that redemption could still exist. The war for his legacy and their hearts had just begun. Victor Shaw wasted no time turning coal enterprises into something unrecognizable. Within a week, news outlets praised his swift strategic restructuring, while quietly celebrating the downfall of the man who had once seemed untouchable. Behind the polished press releases, thousands of employees received thinly worded emails about adjustments and efficiency targets. The scholarship program, Lily's mother's dream, was dismantled. Overnight, Nathan watched the announcement from his living room, face expressionless, the television's glow painting his features in pale blue. Sophia stood behind him, anger simmering under her calm. He's erasing her memory, she said quietly. He's turning compassion into profit. I know, Nathan murmured. But if I walk back in that building now, I'll be exactly what I promised I'd stop being. Then don't walk in as who you were, she said. Walk in as who you've become. The idea lingered long after she left that night, carrying her lesson notes pressed against her chest. Nathan barely slept. His mind ran through plans the way it once did during acquisitions. Except this time, the stakes weren't money. They were the souls attached to every scholarship letter, every child who believed his company cared. By morning, he called Elena. I need access to the archives, he said. Elena hesitated. Victor's restricted everything. You're technically an outsider now. Then we'll find another door. At 9 that evening, they met in a dim parking garage beneath the building. Elena handed him a flash drive. Internal memos, budgets, the sale contracts for the foundation assets. Victor's using shell subsidiaries. He plans to liquidate everything before month's end. Nathan took the drive, his expression grim. Then I have less than 2 weeks. You can't leak it, Elena warned. They'll bury you in lawsuits. I don't need to leak it, he said. I need to remind them what we built this company for. Sophia found him later that night in the study, papers spread across the desk, coffee gone cold. You're planning something, she said. He looked up, exhaustion softening his sharpness. I'm planning a truth Victor can't spin. Then you'll need help, she said. And not from people in suits. Within days, the plan began to take shape. Sophia reached out to the families of scholarship students, those who had been told their funding was temporarily suspended. Parents, teachers, volunteers. They responded with stories, photos, voices that carried the heartbeat of what Cole Enterprises had once meant. Nathan and Sophia spent nights compiling them into a short film, children opening acceptance letters, teachers reading gratitude notes, Lily's mother speaking in an old recording about wealth measured in second chances. When Nathan watched the finished version, he couldn't speak. This is it, Sophia said. This is your story, Nathan. The one they can't twist. How do we release it? The same way truth always spreads, she replied. Through people who still care. They uploaded it anonymously. Within 24 hours, it had millions of views. Hashtags trended. News anchors quoted Lily's mother's words. Wealth means nothing if it doesn't lift someone else with it. Victor's office erupted. He called Nathan before dawn. How did this? I shared what was already yours to share, Nathan said evenly. You've sabotaged the company. I reminded it what it was for. Victor's voice turned cold. You think sentiment wins markets. You're done, Nathan. I'll bury you so deep no one remembers your name. Then I'll start over without one. He hung up. The video had done more than stir sympathy. It sparked revolt. Investors began to question Victor's direction. Employees threatened to resign in protest. Journalists camped outside the headquarters demanding comment. The empire was shaking, not from scandal this time, but from conscience. Sophia, however, saw the cost. He'll come after you personally now, she said. Not as a rival, as an enemy. I know, Nathan answered. That's how men like Victor operate. When they can't buy your silence, they try to break your spirit. He turned to her, eyes weary but alive. Do you ever regret meeting me? Never, she said. You gave me proof that love beyond money still exists. He smiled faintly. You taught me the same. For a moment, the world felt still again. Two souls meeting in the middle of chaos, holding on because there was nowhere safer to stand. But peace was always temporary around men like Victor. 3 days later, while Nathan and Sophia walked Lily home from her reinstatement ceremony, they noticed a black car parked across the street. 2 men inside watched without subtlety. Nathan's instincts sharpened. He's having us followed, he muttered. Sophia frowned. He would, Nathan interrupted. Victor's message is always fear. That night, Nathan sent Lily to stay with Elena for a few days, to be safe. Sophia refused to leave. If he's trying to scare you, you won't fight it alone, she said. He wanted to protest, but saw in her eyes the same courage that had once defied him in his own mansion. Rain came again, soft but insistent. Nathan stood by the window, watching the reflection of a woman who had turned his entire world right side up. You know, he said quietly, every empire I built was designed to keep me from feeling anything, and now I'd trade all of it just to keep you safe. She walked to him, placing her hand over his. Then stop protecting me with walls. Protect me with truth. He turned toward her, and before thought could intervene, he kissed her. Slow, hesitant, the kind of kiss that carried apology, surrender, and promise in the same breath. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "You know this will make everything harder." "I don't care anymore," he said. "For once, I'm not afraid of hard." Outside, the black car's headlights flickered once, then disappeared into the night. By morning, the video had reached every major news outlet in the country. Public support exploded. The Foundation's reinstatement became a rallying cry. For the first time in years, Nathan's name was associated not with power but redemption. Yet beneath that triumph lurked danger. Victor had power left, and pride wounded more deeply than fortune ever could. Sophia received an anonymous text that morning. "You made him weak. Don't be here when he falls." She showed Nathan the message. His jaw tightened. "He's threatening you now. He's desperate," she said. "Desperate men are predictable. Then we make him face what he's running from," Nathan said. Publicly, she looked at him. "You're not planning to humiliate him." "No," he said quietly. "I'm planning to save what's left of the company before he burns it down out of spite." The plan that followed would test everything they had built together. Trust, courage, and the fragile love that had grown in the ashes of empire. As Nathan stared out over the skyline that once belonged to him, Sophia took his hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said, "remember what your daughter saw first in me. It wasn't rebellion. It was belief." He turned to her, eyes soft but fierce. "Then belief is all we need." Outside, dawn broke over the city like a promise that hadn't yet decided whether to keep itself. The morning of the shareholders' summit dawned heavy with anticipation. It would be Victor Shaw's first public address as CEO, and if Nathan's plan worked, his last. Sophia helped Nathan knot his tie, hands trembling slightly despite her calm expression. You don't owe them your dignity," she whispered. "You already proved your worth." "This isn't about worth," Nathan said. "It's about truth. They deserve to see who's really been steering their ship." Lily came down the stairs, clutching the necklace her mother used to wear. "You'll need this," she said, fastening it around his wrist like a charm. "Mom always said courage isn't loud. It's steady." Nathan smiled, brushing her cheek. She was right. At the convention hall downtown, cameras lined the marble foyer. Investors mingled, journalists whispered. Security guards scanned the crowd for anyone who didn't belong. In the front row, Sophia sat beside Elena, both of them tense, trying to look like spectators when their hearts were on the stage. Victor took the podium first, his voice smooth and rehearsed. "Cole Enterprises stands at a new threshold of progress. We are streamlining, innovating, optimizing." He paused for applause that came out of habit, not conviction. "And we remain grateful to Mr. Cole for his past service." The phrase "past service" sliced through the room like a quiet insult. Nathan waited until Victor's speech concluded, then rose from his seat at the back. The crowd turned, murmuring. He walked down the aisle slowly, deliberately. "Forgive the interruption," he said, taking the microphone from an uncertain assistant. "But before we celebrate progress, I'd like to remind everyone what we built this company on." Victor's jaw tightened. "Nathan, this isn't your platform anymore." "Maybe not," Nathan replied. "But it's still my name on the door, and my promise on every life this company touches." He pressed a button on the remote. The massive LED screen behind him flickered to life, showing footage from the video Sophia had created. Children learning, families thriving, teachers thanking the foundation. Gasps filled the room. "This," Nathan said, voice steady, "was the heartbeat of Cole Enterprises, and under new leadership it was silenced, for profit, not principle. But you, our investors, our employees, our partners, deserve to know the truth." Victor stormed toward him. "You're trespassing on private property," he hissed. "I'll have you removed." "You already did," Nathan said calmly. "But you can't remove conscience." The crowd broke into low, uneasy murmurs. Cameras caught every second. Journalists started recording, fingers flying across their screens. Victor tried to override the feed, but Eleanor, seated near the tech crew, leaned forward and whispered, "Leave it running." Sophia watched from the edge of the stage, her heart pounding. Nathan's voice carried more weight than she had ever heard in it. Not the commanding tone of a billionaire, but the grounded conviction of a man reborn. The world calls this a billionaire love story, Nathan continued. A rich man, poor woman scandal. But that's not what this is. This is about love beyond money. About remembering that wealth means nothing if it builds walls instead of bridges. The applause began hesitantly, then grew, rolling like a wave through the hall. Even some board members stood. Victor froze, realizing the tide had turned. You think emotion will save you? Victor spat. Markets don't care about redemption. No, Nathan said softly. But people do. Security hesitated, waiting for orders that never came. Cameras swarmed the stage. Victor's composure cracked. He lunged for the microphone. You've ruined this company. Nathan stepped aside. No, Victor. You already did. I'm just showing them where the cracks began. In that moment, Elena approached the stage with a folder. For the record, she said, her voice clear, the Foundation's assets were sold to shell companies under Mr. Shaw's personal control. The evidence has been submitted to the press. Gasps erupted. Flashbulbs exploded. Victor's face drained of color. You planted her, he accused, glaring at Nathan. She planted herself, Nathan replied. Because integrity doesn't take orders. Security finally intervened, but not to remove Nathan. 2 guards escorted Victor from the stage as reporters shouted questions that no one answered. Nathan looked out at the audience, the chaos, the flood of cameras. For the first time in years, he felt unafraid of being seen. He found Sophia in the crowd. Her eyes were wet, but her smile was steady. He stepped down, reaching her just as she rose from her seat. Oh, you did it, she whispered. No, he said, taking her hand. We did. Outside, the sunlight broke through clouds like a verdict. Reporters followed them to the steps, calling questions. Nathan stopped and faced them. You want a headline? He said. Here it is. The truth doesn't need wealth to survive. That night, the story flooded every network. Nathan Cole exposes corporate corruption. CEO ousted. The world that had once celebrated his fall now marveled at his rise, but he didn't read a word of it. He was home, sitting with Sophia and Lily in the garden, the smell of rain-soaked earth around them. Lily leaned her head on her father's shoulder. Are we safe now? Nathan looked at her, then at Sophia. Maybe not safe, he said, but free, Sophia smiled. Freedom was always the real fortune. Nathan turned to her, fingers brushing hers under the table. Then I'm finally rich. For the first time since the story began, laughter came easily. Yet beneath it, a quiet truth pulsed. Their fight was over. But their love had only just begun to test its strength against the world that once tried to define it. The lights from the city flickered beyond the garden walls, and for a fleeting moment everything felt still, until a faint rustle near the gate drew Nathan's attention. A courier stood there, drenched from the rain, holding a sealed envelope marked with Cole Enterprises insignia. He handed it to Nathan and left without a word. Sophia watched as Nathan opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no letterhead, no signature, just a sentence written in Victor's unmistakable handwriting. If you think this is over, you've underestimated what revenge can buy. Nathan folded the paper slowly, his jaw tightening. He met Sophia's eyes, voice low. He's not done, and neither, they both knew, were they. Nathan stared at the letter long after the courier was gone. The ink bled slightly from the rain, the handwriting angry and deliberate. Sophia watched from across the room, her voice calm but firm. You knew he wouldn't stop quietly. I did, Nathan admitted. But I thought truth would scare him off. Truth doesn't scare men like Victor, she said. Only exposure. Nathan folded the paper, slipping it into a drawer. Then that's exactly what he's about to get. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. Anonymous phone calls that hung up after a single breath. A dark SUV parked outside Sophia's apartment for hours. Lily's school sent notice that someone had tried to access her student records. Nathan met with the police, but their answers were routine. No direct threat, no evidence, no protection. He could hear Victor's mocking silence behind every closed door. That night, Sophia packed a small bag and showed up at Nathan's door. If he's watching me, he already knows where you live, she said. I'm safer here than alone. He wanted to argue but didn't. The thought of her somewhere he couldn't protect her made his stomach twist. Then you stay, he said quietly. Until this ends. Days passed in uneasy peace, Nathan worked on reclaiming the foundation through legal channels, while Sophia helped Lily prepare for her final exam, the one that would determine her reinstatement. It became their sanctuary, those evenings at the dining table, surrounded by notebooks and laughter that defied the storm outside. But beneath the warmth, tension coiled like a hidden wire. One afternoon, while Sophia was out shopping for groceries, Nathan received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was low and smug. "You've made a fool of yourself, Nathan. The board's sympathy won't last. And the woman, she's leverage, nothing more. Touch her," Nathan said, his voice like steel, "and you'll regret it." The caller chuckled. "You've already lost everything that matters to you. I'm just here to remind you what that feels like." The line went dead. When Sophia returned, she found him at the window again, fists clenched. "What did he say?" she asked. "He reminded me how much I have to lose." "Then remind him how much you've already survived," she said. Her steadiness anchored him, the way it always did. For a moment, their silence became a language of its own. That night, a storm rolled through the city, thunder echoing over the hills. The power flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Nathan lit candles while Lily slept upstairs. Sophia stood near the window, watching the rain. "He'll stop when he realizes he can't control what he doesn't understand," she murmured. "And what's that?" Nathan asked. "Love," she said simply. He crossed to her, the candlelight catching the warmth in her eyes. "Then he's already lost." The kiss they shared was slow, inevitable, an answer to every unspoken question since the day she'd first stepped into his house. It wasn't desperate, it was deliberate, like the beginning of a vow neither had planned to make aloud. When they finally parted, she rested her head against his chest. "I used to think love belonged to people who had time for it," she said. "But I think maybe love is what creates time, not what uses it." Nathan closed his eyes, holding her tighter. "Then we finally have enough." The storm outside built into a roar, wind shaking the windows. And beneath it, the faint sound of tires crunching over gravel. Nathan's body tensed. "Stay here," he whispered, grabbing the flashlight. He moved to the door, peered out into the darkness, and froze. A fire burned at the edge of the property. By the time they reached it, one of his cars was already engulfed in flames. The fire department arrived minutes later, but the message was clear. Victor wasn't bluffing. "Send Lily to your sister," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "It's time we end this." Nathan turned to her. "You don't belong in this war." "I do," she said, "because I was the first thing he tried to use against you." The next day, Nathan and Sophia went to the press together. Cameras captured them side by side, no longer hiding, no longer cautious. Nathan spoke first, explaining the harassment, the threats, the arson. Then he handed Sophia the microphone. Her voice trembled only once. This began as a story about class, about a billionaire and a waitress. But what it became is a story about dignity. You can take away money, titles, companies, but not the truth about who people are when no one's watching. The silence that followed was absolute. Then the applause began, soft, growing, unstoppable. That night, the same footage Victor had once used to humiliate them now looped across national television. Except this time, the world saw something different. Not scandal, but courage. Not shame, but love beyond fear. Victor Shaw was summoned for questioning the next morning. Fraud, obstruction, and destruction of property. The empire he'd stolen began to crumble. When the news reached Nathan's house, he didn't smile. He simply looked at Sophia and said, "It's over." She touched his cheek, eyes full of something deeper than relief. "No," she whispered. "It's just beginning." Outside, dawn broke clean and golden after the storm. Lily's laughter drifted from upstairs, light and real. For the first time, the mansion didn't feel like a monument to grief. It felt like a home built on truth. Nathan turned to Sophia. "You changed everything," he said. She smiled softly. "I only reminded you who you were." He kissed her again, sunlight catching her hair, the weight of years falling away. But even in peace, life leaves a test waiting quietly around the corner. The phone rang. Elena's voice came through, urgent. "Nathan, you need to see this." Victor didn't act alone. The room went still. Nathan met Sophia's gaze, calm but resolute. "Then we'll finish what we started." Outside, the world moved on, but their story had one final truth left to face. Elena arrived at the mansion before sunrise, her face pale, clutching a thick folder. Nathan met her in the study, still half-dressed, eyes heavy with fatigue but mind already racing. Sophia followed close behind, wrapping a sweater around herself. "Tell me," Nathan said. Elena hesitated, then spread the documents across the desk. Victor wasn't working alone. These contracts trace back to a holding firm in Zurich, registered under a fake name. But the real owner, there's your father's former partner, Graham Vance. Nathan froze. "That's impossible. He died 10 years ago." Eleanor shook her head. "No, he disappeared. Legally dead, yes, but these bank transfers started 2 years ago. The same month Victor joined your board." Sophia frowned. "So this man, this partner, has been behind it all?" "Partly," Elena said. "Victor was just his weapon, and now that Victor's under investigation, Vance is moving the rest of the assets offshore. If he succeeds, the foundation funds vanish for good." Nathan leaned back, jaw tightening. "He's finishing what my father started." Sophia looked at him. "What did your father start?" He exhaled slowly, eyes distant. "A legacy built on power. He believed feelings made men weak. When I took over, I promised I'd never let emotions cloud judgment. And for years I lived by that. Until you walked into that cafe." Sophia touched his arm gently. "Then maybe this is your chance to rebuild his legacy into something worth inheriting." Nathan straightened, resolve forming in his eyes. "We go to Zurich." Elena's head shot up. "You can't just fly there. The authorities—" "I'm not asking permission," Nathan said. "I'm retrieving what's mine." By noon they were on a plane, Nathan, Sophia, and Eleanor, leaving Lily safe with friends. The cabin hummed with quiet tension. Sophia watched clouds pass beneath them, feeling the strange weight of traveling toward a past that wasn't hers, but had shaped everything between them. Nathan broke the silence. "You don't have to come. I do," she said. "Because love isn't something you fight for halfway." He smiled faintly. "You always find the better words." When they landed, Zurich was wrapped in grey drizzle. Elena guided them through the narrow streets toward a discreet law office. Inside, a receptionist recognized Nathan immediately, even without introduction. "Mr. Cole," she said nervously. "Mr. Vance has been expecting you." Sophia's pulse quickened. "Expecting?" The woman nodded. "He sent a car." Minutes later, a black sedan pulled up, driver silent as they slid into the back seat. The city blurred into countryside, then into a secluded estate overlooking Lake Zurich. Graham Vance waited on the terrace, a tall man with silver hair, posture still regal despite age. His eyes carried that same cold precision Nathan once saw in his own reflection. "I wondered how long it would take before you found me," Vance said, voice smooth, almost amused. "I must admit, Victor disappointed me. He had ambition but no control." Nathan's tone was measured, lethal in its calm. "You orchestrated everything. Victor, the foundation's collapse, the smear campaign." "I merely revealed how fragile your idealism was," Vance replied. "You thought empathy could coexist with empire. But power isn't inherited, Nathan. It's taken." Sophia stepped forward. "You destroyed children's futures for profit." Vance's gaze flicked to her. "Ah, the waitress. The moral anchor. I suppose you think you saved him." Her chin lifted. "He saved himself the day he stopped listening to men like you." Nathan's voice deepened. "You're transferring funds to shell accounts under your name." "Stop it now," Vance smirked. "Or what? You'll ruin me? You already lost your throne." "I didn't lose it," Nathan said. "I gave it up to build something real." Vance studied him for a long moment, then turned to Sophia. "You cost him everything. The wealth, the company, his name." She met his stare. "No. I reminded him that a name means nothing if it stands for nothing." Vance laughed softly. "Sentiment. You'll learn, both of you. Love doesn't survive power. It becomes its victim." Nathan's patience broke. "Maybe in your world. Not in mine." He tossed a flash drive onto the table. "Everything you've done, every offshore transfer, every false subsidiary is on there. Courtesy of someone inside your network who still believes in conscience." For the first time, Vance's mask cracked. "You wouldn't dare." "I already did," Nathan said. "Interpol has it. You have 1 hour before they arrive." Vance's voice dropped to a growl. "You're making a mistake, boy. Compassion makes you weak." Nathan took Sophia's hand, steady. "No, it makes me untouchable." The sound of distant sirens rose over the lake. Vance's expression shifted from rage to disbelief. "You'd betray your own bloodline?" "My bloodline betrayed itself long before I did," Nathan said. The police arrived moments later, flashing lights reflecting on the water. Vance didn't resist. He only stared at Nathan as they led him away. "You'll see," he murmured. "The world doesn't reward redemption." Nathan watched him go, rain beginning to fall again. Sophia stepped closer, laying her head against his shoulder. "Then we'll stop waiting for the world to reward it," she said softly. "We'll just live it." He exhaled, the tension leaving him at last. "I thought this would feel like victory," he said. "But it feels like release." "That's what real victories are," she replied. "Freedom from what you used to be." As they walked back toward the car, hand in hand, the gray sky broke open, light pouring through like forgiveness. Nathan looked at her and smiled. "We're going home." Back in the mansion days later, Lily ran into his arms, laughter echoing through the hallways. Sophia watched them from the doorway, her eyes glistening. Nathan turned to her, reaching out his hand. "You're part of this now," he said. "Not as a guest. As family." She hesitated, overcome. "Are you sure?" He smiled, pulling her close. "I've never been more certain of anything." That night, as the house settled into quiet, Sophia looked around. The photographs, the warmth, the peace rebuilt from ruin. For the first time, she felt she belonged to a story that didn't have to end in pain. But when she glanced out the window, the reflection of the city lights shimmered across the glass. And beneath their glow, she saw a shadow move by the gate. Nathan joined her, following her gaze. "It's probably security," he said, though his tone wavered. Sophia nodded slowly, but her hand found his. "Or maybe it's just the past making sure we don't forget it's still watching." Nathan drew her closer, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the gate. "Let it watch," he said quietly. "We've already rewritten the ending." And for the first time since the story began, he meant it. Morning came quietly, with sunlight pouring through curtains that had once guarded a house of grief. The scent of coffee filled the air, mingling with the faint sound of Lily's laughter somewhere down the hall. For the first time in years, Nathan felt the rhythm of a life that didn't demand perfection, just presence. Sophia stood by the kitchen window, her hair loose, her eyes soft with the kind of peace that only comes after surviving too much. "It feels strange," she said. "The silence. No headlines, no boardrooms, no threats." Nathan smiled faintly. "Strange can be good. Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The chaos?" He shook his head. "No, I miss who I thought I was supposed to be. But I like who I'm becoming more." She poured 2 cups of coffee, handing him one. "Then maybe that's what redemption looks like. Becoming who you were meant to be, not who they told you to become." He looked at her, the morning light catching the warmth in her eyes. "And you? Do you miss the cafe?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "But now I wake up knowing I'm not just surviving the day, I'm building one." Their smiles met across the table, easy and unguarded. The kind of smile that comes from having nothing left to hide. Later that day, the 3 of them visited the school where the foundation had just reopened its first scholarship program. Children gathered in the courtyard, holding small flags with the word Esperanza, hope, printed across them. Nathan watched as one boy handed Sophia a flower, his grin wide and sincere. "You see that?" she whispered. "That's what love beyond money looks like." Nathan nodded. "That's what your faith built." Reporters waited by the gate, but for once their presence didn't feel invasive. One of them called out, "Mr. Cole, is it true you turned down offers to rebuild your company?" Nathan turned to face them, his tone calm. "Some things aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to be reborn." He didn't elaborate, and they didn't press. The statement said enough. That evening they returned home exhausted but light. Lily fell asleep on the couch with a book in her hands. Sophia covered her with a blanket and stood watching her for a long moment. "She reminds me of what courage looks like when it's innocent," she said. Nathan joined her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "She reminds me of what love looks like when it's real." The fire crackled in the fireplace, soft against the hum of the city beyond the windows. For a while neither of them spoke. There was no need. When Sophia finally turned to him, her voice was a whisper. "You know, the first day I walked into your house, I thought I didn't belong. Now I can't imagine leaving." He brushed his thumb along her cheek. "That's because this isn't my house anymore." "It's ours," she smiled, eyes glistening. "Then I guess we both found home." They kissed softly. The kind of kiss that doesn't ask for promises, it keeps them. A week later, the city held a public ceremony honoring Nathan for his contributions to education. He wore no tuxedo, no gold pin. Sophia stood beside him in a simple blue dress, her hand resting over his. When he stepped up to speak, the room fell silent. "I spent half my life thinking wealth was something you counted," he began. "Then a stranger taught me it's something you give." He glanced at Sophia, then at Lily in the front row. "This isn't a story about a billionaire or a waitress. It's a story about what happens when someone teaches you that love is the only investment that never loses value." Applause filled the hall. Slow, sincere, not for power or prestige, but for something deeper. That night, as they drove home under the quiet hum of streetlights, Nathan took Sophia's hand. "Do you realize," he said, smiling, "that everything we built came from a cup of coffee you served in a place I didn't belong?" She laughed softly. "You always belonged. You just hadn't learned how to be human again." He nodded, eyes warm. "And you taught me." She turned to the window, watching the city lights fade into the horizon. "Funny thing about love," she said. "It doesn't fix you. It just reminds you you're still worth fixing." Nathan smiled, leaning back. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life remembering." The car wound through the quiet streets until they reached the hill overlooking the city. The same skyline that once defined his empire now simply looked like a place where people lived and dreamed. Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder. "You ever wonder how we made it here?" "Every day," he said. "And every day I thank the accident that let me meet you." They sat there in silence, the world beneath them moving on, the past finally still. For once, there was no battle left to fight, only the simple, steady rhythm of a life rebuilt from truth. Nathan turned to her one last time that night and whispered, "Love didn't make me weaker, Sophia. It made me real." And in the quiet glow of the city below, she smiled through her tears. "That's all I ever wanted you to be." Before the screen faded to black, his voice lingered in the air, soft but certain. "Subscribe if you believe that love still changes people."